we're going to get going. So firstly, I'd like you to welcome all of you to this bonus session for Gender Networks, and to say a huge thank you to the team, Gemma and her colleagues at DTCC for organising this. So I'm going to leave you in the most capable hands of Dave and Martin. So I'm going to hand over to Dave to get us going. But thanks all for attending. I'm sure you'll agree this is a very, very important topic for all of us. So if you enjoyed the session, I'm going to post on LinkedIn later on. Please do feel free to comment. So Dave, over to you, and a huge thank you from us once again.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I appreciate it. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and good evening if it pertains. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Dave Eisner. I'm the Executive Director and Head of Physical Security and Life Safety here at the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, commonly referred to as DTCC. I'm based out of the New York, New Jersey region. I have over 30 years of experience in the security industry, and I have 2 degrees in criminal justice. Have been trained in many aspects of safety and security, such as hostage negotiations, security awareness, close protection management, bomb threat awareness, active threat, active shooter, workplace violence, international security operations, human trafficking, counterterrorism, just to name a few. So I want to thank the Gender Networks and Vanessa for having us here today. Today's session will be on personal safety. The session is in no way meant to instill any type of fear or anxiety, panic into anyone that's listening, but it's to give you some guidance and best practices when it comes to situational and safety awareness. I also want to make clear that if you are a victim of a crime or some other unacceptable behavior, it is not your fault. It is never your fault. It is the perpetrators, the assailant, the criminal, the abuser. It is their fault. There is no place in our society for victim blaming, and victim blaming is a devaluating act and should never be accepted or tolerated. So that being said, I will say joining us today in our session is our Associate Director, Martin Hassel, based in our Wrexham office, Security Manager, Valerie Johnson, based in our Tampa, Florida office, and Security Coordinator, Sydney Martinez, based in our Jersey City office. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Valerie. And Valerie, if you could kindly introduce yourself and then turn it over to Martin. You're on mute, Valerie.
Good morning again, everyone. I've worked with the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation for over 25 years. And all of those 25 years, I've worked with global security management. I started out as an officer while I was pursuing my degree in accounting. And once I received that degree, I continued in global security. I became an investigator. I worked as an investigator, then I worked in past administration. And of course, I became a people manager, and I'm now working in the Tampa office. Part of the reason I kind of stuck with global security management is because of my previous work experience. I can tell you that I was actually unfortunately robbed twice when I was younger. And it was at my first job, McDonald's. I was at the register. Someone came up and they stuck their hand, covered, of course, with a sweater, and said, "Hand me all the cash in your register." Now, I did try to get the attention of some of my co-workers, but to no avail. I ended up handing over the cash in the register and called the police. Curiously enough, the same gentleman showed up a week later, and he did the same thing with my manager. She had a completely different response. She kind of went over the counter, went at the guy, and caught him, and the police were called. Now, this, along with some of the other events that happened over the years, September 2001, where we've seen a drastic change in the environment within global security management, are some of the reasons why I've kind of stuck with the security management team. And during today's presentation, hopefully we can impart some information to you that can help you in your personal and professional lives. And again, thank you so much for the invitation here today. And over to you, Martin.
Thank you, Valerie. I'm Martin Hassel, and as stated, I'm the Associate Director for Security and Life Safety. Now, I cover all the EMEA sites throughout Europe, and as well as Chennai. I've been in DTC for about 6 years now, but my previous life was 25 years in the British military as a movement controller, where I did strategic logistics globally, so went to many countries on operations and exercises and supported the safe movement of personnel equipment, ammunition, dangerous goods going around the world. So have quite a bit of background and just imparting information to make sure smooth transit through different locations go well. We also keep up on current threats, security, life safety methodologies with working closely with regional law enforcement and emergency services. And just to highlight a few of those agencies, we work with the American Society of the Industrial Security, the Overseas Security Advisory Council, which has regional chapters in the UK and throughout Europe. Regional US embassies, we have links with the US regional security officers. We partake in membership of the Security Institute, the Institute of Risk Management, City of London crime prevention agencies. So this is all really good information, which we can then sort of focus and look at creating these type of presentations internally for staff, just to make sure that people are aware that, things change out there, protests change, the locations, and we can just make sure that we're giving the right information that people can make the right choices and have that awareness. So if you have any questions within this presentation, which are relevant to this presentation, we have a pigeonhole out there with the link. So if you want to drop any questions into that, we will then have a look at those and try and answer those at the end of this session. So that's all I've got. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Valerie. Yes, the pigeonhole is available if there are any questions. Also, our email addresses are here on the screen. So if you want to jot them down, if you have any questions afterwards, as well as our phone numbers, we'd be more than happy to get an answer for you and get back to you. Okay, so let's talk about the overview of what we're going to discuss today. The main topic that we'll try to drive home is situational awareness, safety awareness. But these are the topics that we'll discuss today, and I'll kind of go through these kind of quick. Crime, increasing personal situational awareness, personal risk model, workplace violence, what to do in public places, what to do in public transportation, hotel, travel safety, safety tips, and some sort of harassment that we'll discuss. So the introduction, this session is geared to help familiarize you with safety procedures, will assist you in developing a safety and personal security mindset. Very, very important in your day-to-day life, not only at work, going to and from work, on vacations, things that you could talk to your children about as well. And the objectives of this presentation are to raise your awareness, making sure all you can understand and be aware of the problems that exist and how attacks occur. To understand situational awareness and the part it plays in everyone's safety and security in every walk of their life. Provide practical advice that will mitigate and minimize exposure to violence in public spaces. This here is the crime triangle. So what this actually is you need a criminal to commit a crime, a victim who can be victimized, and the location or opportunity to occur. The most important thing for you to keep in mind is to reduce that likelihood is you want to reduce the likelihood of being a victim. And how do you do that? You try and take away the opportunity. We'll talk a little bit more later on about target hardening. And I think that's really the key for you. You want to be aware of your surroundings and make sure that you can, if all possible, put yourself in a situation so you're not a target. So crimes, they range from minor offenses to obviously very serious and violent acts. An attack, usually fast, they're sudden, normally seeking the element of surprise. Usually there's a financial aspect involved in it, whether you're at an ATM or coming out of a supermarket, things of that nature where the criminal kind of knows that if they attack you, there's a financial reward involved. They can be extremely violent, and it could be to overpower the victim. Escape. Attackers usually rely on a different means of escape, but more than likely they want to put themselves in a position so after they commit the crime, they can get away undetected if possible. Exploitation. This can be the sale of stolen goods, financial gain, or more at a personal level, self-gratification, ego, or actual act of violence itself. Once again, the most important facet in securing your safety is awareness. Be aware of your surroundings. Trust your instincts. Know what seems to be right and what seems to be wrong. And you could do that in every walk of your life, whether you're on the tube, whether you're in a restaurant, things of that nature. It's always important to put yourself in a position to protect yourself. So I'll just give you an example. When I go to restaurants, I always sit facing the door, so I can see what comes through the door. Now that's just me, but if I have my back to the door, I never really know what's going on. So that's just one part of awareness. I know Martin will talk later on about where to sit when you're on the tube and things of that nature. So be aware of the behavior of the people around you. What doesn't seem right? If it doesn't seem right, trust your instincts. It's probably not right. Be aware of the environment you're in, safe spots, dangerous spots, times of day to travel. Here in New York City, you know, I would highly recommend recently, especially with the increase in criminal acts, to not ride the subway late at night. There's been a real rash in criminal activity. So you know that, so that's where you stay away from. 90% of self-defense is awareness, risk reduction, and avoiding confrontation. The remaining 10% is the physical preparedness, meaning know what you want to do before the thing may happen. Now, Valerie.
Thanks, Dave. Now, the funny thing is, we all know before we start out what we're going to be doing each day. What we're asking you guys to consider here is to accessorize accordingly, depending on where you're going. You want to present the image of a hardened target. And when I say hardened, I don't mean that, you're going to walk around with this like, a look on your face. I mean hardened in that if a perpetrator or someone is looking to take something from you, they're going to maybe possibly look at the next guy and not look at you. So what we're asking you to do is to not advertise your jewelry in the wrong place, like the subways or in a crowded venue. We're asking you not to leave your business cards or identification in your cars, where someone could get to them and find out exactly where you work. You want to also not leave your business cards, let's say in a cup. They always have these little gimmies that say, hey, if you leave your cards in a cup at a pub or something like that, you could win a prize. That's not a good thing to do because you may end up attracting the wrong attention. If you are traveling on the subways or in a crowded area, make sure you have your bags tucked in your body in the bend of your elbow. And if you're still carrying cash with you, you want to minimize the amount of cash that you have on your person and maybe split it between your pockets, your wallets, and any kind of a bag that you have on your person. So in the event that you stop and you're purchasing something, you're not taking out a wad of cash. You're actually just taking out maybe $20 to pay for the item in question. If it's necessary for you to carry credit cards with you, try to minimize and just carry the credit cards that you utilize. It's not necessary for you to carry 10, 15 credit cards with you at all. And this helps to reduce the risk of you losing and possibly having to replace your cards. The final thing I want to mention in regards to this topic is just to make sure that you have your bags, your wallets, and your purses closed and zipped at all times. The other thing, the graph below, it actually represents the number of stalking incidents that have occurred in 2021. Now, according to the national statistics, the Office for the National Statistics, there was a 28% increase, with more than half of the victims reporting incidents since the beginning of the lockdown. Another alarming statistic shows that as of March of 2021, there was an estimated 1.6 million victims of domestic violence in the England and Wales areas. This is a 6% increase over the previous year. This increase, unfortunately, directly correlates to the lockdown and the inability of victims to safely seek support. We have reported, according to the ONS, over 600,000 victims of sexual assault and almost 900,000 reports of stalking victims. What we're asking folks to do here is, if you find yourself in a situation like this, we want you to absolutely report it as soon as possible and get the help that you need, either from your human resources department, your local law enforcement, but definitely report these incidents if they are occurring to you. Oftentimes what law enforcement see is that by the time the victim comes to them to report an incident, it's usually 10 or 15 incidents that are being reported by that one individual. So early reporting is encouraged in cases like this. Thank you.
One thing before you jump in, Juan, I just wanted to say in reference to the bags, it's very important to know that, a lot of people want to keep their bags very secure. So they put it over their neck, under their arm, Martin will discuss this a little later on, but that is a very dangerous tactic, because if somebody wants to take your bag, especially on a motorbike, they will rip the strap and just keep pulling. And if it's wrapped around your neck and around your arm, it's going to be very difficult for you to disentangle. So remember, anything that you have is not worth your safety and to be quite honest, your life. So don't do that. Martin?
Actually, that's me.
Go for it,
Just
Maravari.
again, you got it.
Please.
All right. Violence. I'm going to discuss with you the triggers that can lead to violence. And this is, there are many triggers that are out there that can lead to violence that involve women. Violence can be enacted both psychologically as well as physically. Control, inherent in the definition, occurs when an individual attempts to control you through manipulative behaviors. Characteristically, this is displayed by individuals who keep score. They're always expecting something in return and making you feel guilty when you don't do what they want. They will gaslight you by denying your expressions of concerns and telling you that it's all in your mind. They have drastic mood changes, they create drama, and they don't like taking no for an answer. The power trigger is an individual who wants to exercise some kind of authority over you. They're constantly reminding folks that they're in charge. They mistreat individuals because of their moods, and they shift blame when things go wrong. Third, ego, with societal inference, plays out in the beliefs that women are inferior as opposed to the superiority of men. This is really on display right now in the Afghanistan region, where women are simply fighting for the right to exist, to work. Rejection can lead to violence if the perpetrator uses this as a justification to seek control over that individual. Infatuation, another trigger, can lead to violence if that individual feels that they're slighted in any way, and that could lead to violence against that individual. Mental health or other medical reasons can be a precursor that can lead to violence. Some additional triggers that we have here are hatred, and it's just simply someone can hate you because of the way you look, because of cultural reasons, ethnicity, and as a result of that, that person could potentially take violent action against you. Misogyny plays itself out in certain cultures and in the workplace. And that's where there's an aversion or prejudice against women that can lead to physical and mental harm. Intoxication, another trigger which leads to lowered inhibition, and that can cause people to act out violently. All of these triggers become harder to identify when the aggressor is a loved one. That trust, that familiarity can influence a false perception as to the intention of the individual. So again, it's really important that if you find yourself in a situation like this, and if you're impacted in any way, to seek the necessary help for yourself. Martin?
This is me. Thank you, Maravari. So I show these pictures, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have seen this movie, Taken. The movie itself was a little far-fetched, but there was some very important facts, aspects of this movie that I thought would be appropriate to share. So if you look at these slides, you have two different scenes where young ladies arrived at the Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, France, on holiday. And the individual, the gentleman here in the brown jacket, approaches them 2 different times, chats them up, very nice. The reason I bring this up is because if you look at this individual and you look at his height, it's not intimidating. His smile, the way he acts, he's not an intimidating presence. So you feel a little more comfortable, right? So what I'm trying to say is all bad people don't have, one eye in a club. This instance here gives you the idea that if they were aware of their surroundings, they gave information, they got into the taxi with them, the taxi then took them to their place where they were staying. So this individual now had tremendous amount of information. He knew they were foreigners, he knew where they were staying. Matter of fact, he wound up getting their cell phone number. These are things that you want to try and avoid. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be social in our daily lives, but we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where someone could take advantage. And unfortunately, the world is full of bad people, and bad things do happen. So you want to do everything you possibly can to remove that ability for someone to take advantage. Next. So personal situational awareness, how do we increase that? So These are very important factors that you and you alone have to make decisions on. Would you run? Would you fight? Things of that nature. So some would-be attackers will immediately give up if their target shows any signs of resistance, whether they use a whistle to gather attention from somebody else, or if they physically fight. Others will become more incensed and more violent. It depends on the situation. And those are things none of us here on this call today or on this presentation can tell you, because we're not there. So be alert, walk with confidence and purpose. Make sure that if you're going somewhere and you're on holiday, take a look at the map before you get onto the street. The last thing you want to do is take out your phone or an actually hard map and start looking at it, because then everyone knows you're lost and you don't belong there. Never let drugs or alcohol cloud your judgment. And that's for everyone, all of us, male, female, anyone that's whether it be on holiday or not. Always trust your instincts. If you feel uncomfortable or uneasy about someone or something, remove yourself from that situation. One thing I've said many, many times is women's intuition is so much better than men. Women have this knack for knowing things just don't seem right, where men somewhat at times are pretty oblivious to it. If you're thinking that you're being followed, change directions, move across the street, go into an open store or a well-lit area. And here, if the unthinkable happens and you are the victim of an attack, try to escape, scream, yell, kick, fight, run, blow a whistle, whatever you have in your ability to get someone else's attention. Stall, talk, whatever you can do to make that situation not so much last longer, but get someone there to help you. If your attacker tries to move you to another area, do whatever it takes to prevent that from happening. Call the police as soon as possible. You know, back to the movie Taken, if you remember, there was a scene where the father says to his daughter, you know, what are they wearing? What are they saying? Those are very important things that can help later on. They may not be able to stop the attack, but those could help law enforcement in apprehending your perpetrator. So whatever your decision is, be confident and be prepared to follow through. You know, in reference to the fifth bullet there, where if the unthinkable happens, this is a decision that each individual has to make. So you need to prepare. And I'm not saying, and God hope that nothing ever happens to any of you, but if the situation happens, what will you do? Will you run? Will you hide? Will you fight? Will you go willingly? Those are decisions that, like I said, we cannot tell you. I know what my personal decisions are, and I'll just give you an example. I'm not telling you what your decision should be, but I traveled extensively through Latin America and some high-risk locations that were very prone to kidnapping. I know myself that there would be no circumstances that I would let myself be taken in a vehicle, because the statistics show that most people who get into that vehicle don't fare very well. So that was something that I knew that if that inevitable thing ever happened to me, or unfortunate thing ever happened, I was not going to get into the vehicle. So you need to think about things like that too. If somebody attacks you, what will you do? And that's a decision you have to make. Next.
Thank you. The benefits of situational awareness. Situational awareness is important because it helps you to interpret the information through your senses based on where you are. It helps you to contextualize the information you are seeing, hearing, and feeling, so you can determine if it's normal to the environment you're in. Situational awareness also helps you to remain alert and vigilant in instances where your concentration may lapse. It also helps you to understand that the environment you're in or passing through, whether it is natural or built, and it helps you to identify possible suspicious activities or behavior. One of the key things that we want you to remember here is that the threats sometimes don't manifest themselves immediately. So we want you to pay close attention to what is happening around you so you can act to mitigate any perceived threats that could potentially affect you or your family. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mavari. As Dave and Mavari sort of gone over, so this is looking at that situational awareness. Now, what we're going to use is the personal risk model, and this is like a red, amber, green. have this type of method in your head. Every time you go on holiday, you want to check out the place, see if there's anything going on in that location. You go into a festival or anything else, you want to make sure that the roads are clear, the weather's fine, and all of this type of stuff. All we're going to be looking at doing is putting this into a risk model so that you, whenever you travel, you start off always at red. And it's only when you get the information to mitigate that risk where you can bring it down to an amber or green. And amber and green are the acceptable risks that you're prepared to do at those locations. So we can reduce a red risk area by breaking down these risks into 3 categories. And they sort of link with what Dave and Maveri's been talking about. So this is person, object, and place. But you can also get this information from locations like the government websites, embassy, travel information, and local police and news services. So you're always trying to have a look at, you know, is there, you're going to a festival, is there some type of drug issue there? Is there protests at these locations in London at the moment? So you want to make sure before you travel, and that could be internally within the UK or globally, you use this same sort of risk model. And it's just that quick assessment to say, no, it's not a red risk area. Yeah, I've got to make sure that I look out for these and I have access to the right and relevant information to make my choices when I'm on the ground. So we're just going to have a look at the next slide, please. There we are. So we're going to have a look at person, object, place, which is POP assessment. And firstly, we're going to look at person. And here we'll look at how we assess people and what to look for to enable you to reduce any risk that they may pose. People pose the greatest risk to our personal safety. And there are several factors that we consider when making initial assessment. When you're dealing with people, you're becoming agitated or uncomfortable or feeling threatened, they will display signs of escalation. This can happen very quickly. If you identify these signs, you should be prepared to move towards the nearest exit and leave the location. Once you've left the location, you should report the incident internally if you're in your business area or externally to local law enforcement. And remember, if this individual is doing it to you, they could be doing it to other people. So the police will get a sort of map of that individual, what they're doing, how they're doing it. And this could be somebody who's looking at theft. It could be somebody who's doing reconnaissance on buildings to try and get into the buildings for theft. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we are looking at the terrorist threat as well. So this could be an active assailant or it could be a terrorist threat. Then we're just looking at object. Does the person approaching you have anything in their hands? Perhaps their hands are in the pocket as you approach. What are they actually carrying? Is there anything within easy reach that could be used against you if they became aggressive? So what you're always doing is just having a look at your situational awareness. So you're looking at the person, do they pose a threat? And this could be you walking at night, going through parks, going through going back home after work. You're just always sort of just analyzing quickly that, if you see something a bit wary, then you can make sure that you can control what your actions are. And then you're looking at place. Is the place untidy, cluttered, neat, or organized? So this could be going into nightclubs, going around your local cities, and you're going down maybe streets that you aren't aware of. So has it got poor lighting, concealed entrances, confined spaces, limited exits? Are there trip hazards? Is there anything lying around could be used to harm you, such as tools, bits of wood, and metal pipes? Does the location display reputable signage? And if not, why not? So you've got your favorite places to go out drinking, or wherever you're going out for a restaurant, you know that these places are reputable, they've got 5-star ratings for their food, but how do you get to that location? Are the taxis and all of this all reputable that you're going to be looking at? So this all sort of deals with your object, place, and people, and they should be able to sort of analyze that and just make sure that you've got your risk assessment sort of done. Preempting escalation, what signs to look for in an individual's demeanor and body language. Distance, try and remain 2 arms length away. And the way you can see this is if you can see their head all the way down to their feet, you're far enough away, because if you're that distance, if they do escalate into any violence, you've got more chance of getting away. With your position, use a relaxed pose, but just stand to the side or just at an oblique angle to that individual, because that gives you more opportunity to go to an exit. And also then just make sure that you know where your exits are. So if you're going to a place unknown, is just have a look around, just say, right, you know, if I've got to leave this area quite quickly, and it could be because of all different things, we know where those exits actually are. So we're just looking at workplace violence, and we've got down here run, hide, fight, which is used in the US, and then in the UK you've got run, hide, tell. You can be in a very vulnerable position when you're in an office location, not just your usual environment, but when visiting clients and other locations. There are often only one exit which you can leave if a situation escalates. You should always treat this location as a red risk area, and remember to carry out your person, object, and place assessments and know your exits. Each business should have an individual active threat, hostile intruder guidance, but there is UK run, hide, tell guidance, which can be accessed via the government website. And there's an actions counters terrorism, e-learning awareness training, and a new ACT app, which is Action Counters Terrorism. And this gives you really good guidance on practical advice, protect the business and the individual, plus information on how to respond in the event of an attack. It also gives you emergency response, post-incident guidance, and live time news updates from UK Protect. So these are really good information to guide you and make sure that you can look at your risk assessment when you're going around your daily business. So next slide, please. So we're going to have a look at public places, and these include parks, shopping centres, outdoor events, or just walking home from work. Always think about your personal risk model, person, object, place, and should avoid shortcuts that are not well traveled or well lit. Know if reputable store is open in the neighborhood late at night. If you're suspected of being followed, stay away from isolated quiet blocks and head towards that store that you know is open. When walking to your car or on the way home, keep your keys in your hand until you're safely inside for added protection. If motorist bothers you whilst you're walking, turn around and walk in the opposite direction of the car. And of course, then go to your safe location, which could be the store which is open. So next slide, please. So shopping centres, these are high footfall areas and attract criminals such as shopping centres. You've got football matches, you've got festivals. So do not carry large sums of money or essential credit cards. Always be alert to your surroundings. Occasionally look behind you. Pickpockets and thieves generally work in teams with lookouts. Always tries to utilize public restrooms, stairwells, elevators with other individuals. If you do not leave anything in your car, criminals watch you to place packages in your car, and whilst you then go back and continue shopping. Parking locations located to heavily traveled entrances and other locations. If you feel somebody's watching or following you, immediately go to a populated area and ask for help and contact the police or security. So next slide, please.
Martin, just before you continue, I was going to jump in on the key thing. You know, Martin talked about having your keys in your hand. I think that's a great recommendation, but I want to stress that if you are not the type of person that thinks they can inflict pain on someone, then I would not do that. So just remember, if you're going to do it with everything, every fiber of your being. Look for the eyes, look for the throat, someplace where you're going to incapacitate that individual so you can get out of there. But if you don't feel you're that type of individual, don't do it, because that could bring more harm onto you.
Sure. And it's also, we keep the keys out is so that you're not fumbling around your bag while you're sat, or your wallet or your person to find your keys whilst you're getting into the car. So it should be one smooth motion, get into the car. Usually cars lock themselves once you turn the engine on or move. So that's sort of the preparedness for having your keys out as well. So next slide, please. So ATM security, this could be a session all on its own, and looking at ATMs are correct. So realistically, if you go into a well-traveled ATM, well lit in a bank or a common area, you don't need to count your cash. Okay, counting your cash at the till at the ATM just shows the type of money you've got, and then you're going to walk away from that ATM, and people might have seen that. So ATM robbery is usually done at night time, and usually males under 25, statistically wise, and mostly work alone. The robbery usually occurs right after the cash is withdrawn. When approaching the ATM, have your cards ready. Do not allow others to enter behind you. Memorize your PIN to prevent loss and speed the transaction. Always block the view for the keypad and take your receipt from the machine when the transaction is complete. If lights around the ATM are not working, do not utilize the machine. Utilize ATMs in well-lit, high-traffic areas. If the machine looks suspicious or out of the ordinary, do not utilize it. Sometimes machines are fraudulently set up to obtain just banking information. Do not carelessly display cash. Individuals are perceived to be wealthy, continue to be the most attractive targets for customers. So you can see up here, there's a few photos here, and these can be concealed cameras to record the actual actions of your PIN being entered in there. There's a good video actually on LinkedIn, which is going around at the moment, and it actually shows you the people looking over your shoulder for your PIN. And in the next slide, we'll just show you some other different items which are going on. So card capture and cameras. So you'll see that there's suspicious items around the actual ATM. So there could be a box of the leaflets, but actually it contains a camera to record your PIN number. And if the card didn't come out, it could be that the card has got a mechanism in there which holds the card. An individual will then come up to you and go, "Oh, I had that problem. Just put in your PIN again and see if it works." You'll put your PIN in, the card doesn't come out, and you can't do anything. They then wait for you to walk off. They then get your card out using this mechanism, and they have your PIN because they saw it being put in. So whenever you're at these locations and something is happening to that machine, is contact your bank or the ATM information which is on the ATM itself. But of course, do not use the machine if you have any suspicions that it's been tampered with, and make sure that you record that. And just put that in to make sure that the law enforcement is aware of that machine being looked like it's being tampered with. Okay, next slide, and I think this is Mavari.
Thanks, Martin. Parks. When you go to the park, it is often to spend time with family, friends, or to just get some much relief from a stressful day, exercising, or just simply you want to enjoy being outdoors. Whether you're a bird watcher or a people watcher, we just want to remind you of some tips that will help you to remain safe. You want to make sure you're traveling in a group. You want to make sure that if you're traveling alone, you want to avoid those least traveled shortcuts, the dirt paths through wooded areas. You want to stay in a well-lit and populated area. If you're a jogger, again, we're going to recommend that you avoid doing so alone. If you're someone who enjoys listening to music when they exercise, as I do, consider just wearing one earpiece versus two. And if you are, I know with some of the, like with the AirPods, you can actually set that to transparency mode so you can listen to the music and you can also hear what's going on around you. Or you want to avoid definitely setting that to noise cancellation mode where You're not hearing anything. You don't know when someone is behind you, when someone comes close to you. So please make sure that you're doing that when you're exercising, especially when you're outside with friends and or with family. You always want to carry some form of identification with you, and that includes emergency contact information. In the event that something happens to you and someone is getting you the help that you need, they need to make sure they can reach out to someone to let them know exactly what's going on. In the event you're unable to speak and address anyone concerning who you are and where you need to go for that event. Consider carrying some form of audible identification device on your person. So in case you need help, you can press a button, or you can blow the whistle, or you can just yell for help as you need. Children, our most precious assets, should be supervised closely. You want to teach them how to respond to strangers. You want to make sure that their names are sewn inside their clothing in case they get lost. And you definitely don't want to display their names on their toys, an example being bikes or any kind of nameplates, etc. You don't want to give an unsavory individual an edge enveloping any kind of familiarity with your child. I think Dave had some more information to add here.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add, and it's just such a valid point that Valerie brings up about our children and being a father. Obviously, my son is older now, but the idea of our children as our precious, most precious part of our lives, it's very important to keep an eye on them. The license plates on the bicycles and names on their shirts where people can see it. That is, a pedophile's dream, right? They have the name, they start to talk to the child. But one of the most important things that I can stress is, when you have discussions with your children, there should never be the term secret. Let's keep a secret between you and I. Let's not tell daddy, that's between you and I. The problem with that, and we all have done it, right? My mother did it to me when I was a child. The problem with that is pedophiles and individuals like that take advantage of that. And they'll say that to the children. Keep this between us. It's just a secret. Don't let your mom and dad know. And because they've already done that with you, they think it's okay. So that's one of the things I think is very important, that you don't have secrets. You shouldn't use that terminology. And the other last thing I'll say is, don't force your children to embrace, hug, or kiss relatives. I know as a young person, that was a very important thing. Make sure you kiss your grandmother, and you'd force the child if he didn't want to. The problem with that is, if a pedophile does it, they think because of the fact that you did it as a parent that they have to do this. So just be careful about things like that, because obviously there are very bad people out there, and especially around parks and schools and things like that. And we want to make sure we keep our children as safe as possible.
Driving. Often when you're out with family or friends and you're in your car, you feel safe, right? The door is secured. You have your music blasting. So you kind of feel that you're kind of secure and safe within your cars. Some things that we want you to remember is that you should always be alert for vehicle robberies, especially during traffic jams caused by any kind of road work or inclement weather. If you hand over what they're demanding, as I explained to you with my own personal experience during the beginning, chances are good it's not going to end up with any kind of violence, aside from someone taking something from you. So if you're approached by a robber, just give them what it is that they're asking for, and it will usually end that situation. If someone attempts to force you off the road, don't panic. What you want to do is you want to blow your horn to constantly attract attention to yourself. If you're forced over, as soon as you stop, you want to put your car in reverse and back away, and you want to keep blowing your horn because you want to continue to attract some attention to yourself, and hopefully the perpetrator will move away when he sees that you're doing this. If you suspect someone is following you, you want to make a few turns down active streets and always in a populated area. Do not, under any circumstances, leave that individual to your home. If you are going to the supermarket and you have to park your car, you want to make sure you do so in a well-lit area. You want to do this not only from the standpoint of discouraging any kind of personal attacks, but this can also help to reduce any chances of auto theft. You always want to lock your car when you get out of your vehicle. When you come out of the supermarket or whatever venue you're at, you want to make sure you're looking inside your car before you get in, just to make sure no one is hiding in the back seat. And you always, I personally, for whatever reason, when I see these vans, if I'm walking down the street and I happen to see a van coming next to me on the same side, I will cross over. And this is the same thing when you're parking your van when you're in a parking lot, when you're parking your car in a lot. You do not park your car next to a van. I don't know, for some reason in my mind, I always think the boogeyman is going to come out of that vehicle, and you always want to avoid being caught in a situation where you're at a disadvantage. So try not to park your vehicle next to a van, just for your own personal safety and that of your family as well. Thank you. I think the next one is mine as well. Public transportation. This brings me back to the days when I would go to school, work, and I lived in New York, in the Bronx. And I had to take the buses and the train to and from those locations. And I can tell you that I broke basically every single rule that I'm about to tell you not to do. And one of those things is to minimize late travel whenever possible. And if you do have to travel in the early morning or late night, you want to make it a point to stay close and stay in the car that's occupied by the conductor. Do not fall asleep while you're riding on the train. You want to sit in the center of the car and away from the door to avoid any kind of purse snatch. If you have a bag with you and you can't hold it in your hand, you want to tuck it underneath your leg until you get off the train. If at any time while you're on the train and you feel someone is staring at you or you become uncomfortable, just simply get up and move to another car that's occupied by individuals. You should always know where your entrances and your exits are. So in the event of an emergency, you can utilize those areas to get away.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, thank you, Mallory. So this is just a few GIFs there, video clips of actual theft and robberies. So as you can see, situational awareness, people, object, place, would be very vital in this. So you may be able to see something. You could see somebody scoping out people's bags under tables. And this is where, having your bag between your legs, not over the back of the seat, and making sure you're never going to stop every type of theft. So of course, always have an action plan of, what would you do if it did get taken from you, which is let them have it. As we've been going on is, whatever item it is, it's just not worth, your life on this. So as you can see here, top left there, the individual literally just walks past the table, grabs the bags and runs off. So you're not going to prevent that unless you've seen that individual looking suspicious prior to that. And, you would then tuck your bag away and just make sure, and you would look at that individual. When you, this is what we're trying to put across. If you look, directly at the individual, they're less likely to do this type of thing because you can see that they're acting suspiciously. Okay, so next slide, please. And this is quite prevalent, especially in major cities at the moment. And this is theft of phones. So this is mopeds driving down the pavement and just snatching people's phones out of their hands. So they've got their earphones in, they're listening to their music, they're online, totally oblivious to the situation. And what it is, you can usually see it's a moped rider with a pillion passenger usually on the back of it. And they're usually scoping around, riding on pavements and all of this. And this is coming more and more aware with the new e-bikes, which are out there, the little tiny scooters, because the individuals can look like that they're just traveling to and from work, and they're just grabbing people's phones out of there. So just to make you aware what Valerie said about sitting in the center of the car and most probably away from the doors. So that individual was literally sitting next to the door, listening to his music, and the individual snatched his headphones off his head, just before the doors were closing. So he knew that he wouldn't get followed out of that train. So these are the type of things that if you've got a bit of situational awareness, you can see the guy looking at you, you can either move down the car, move to a location where there's more people, and just making sure that you're aware, that he's aware that you have seen him. So next slide, please. Okay, and we're just going to sort of go over quickly what you're going to do to make yourself not a prime target, and that's keep your bags and purses closed and secured at all times. I'm just going to do a few of these just looking at time. Do use a money belt if you're carrying significant quantities of cash. Conceal your wallet in a buttoned or zipped pocket where it doesn't bulge. Keep a list that's separate from your wallet and phone of contact numbers, because as you've seen just in those slides before, what happens if your phone gets nicked? And with that phone going, a lot of people don't carry cards anymore. They use PayPal and the actual phone to pay for items as well. So what would you do if you lost that vital bit of equipment? Okay, so just next slide, please. And then it's just the opposite. Do not keep bags and unsecured. Do not solely rely on your phone, which is a real major one lately. As soon as somebody's phone goes, they lose everything off that phone. Do you have a mechanism to wipe the phone remotely? So make sure that the settings are set up that you can make sure that that is wipeable when you actually, if it does go missing. Okay, then next slide, please. And back over to Dave.
Thank you. Just in the interest of time, we're going to move through this kind of quick. So hotels, very important for traveling, whether it be on business or pleasure. Predators may play a great part of hotel employees, push their way through open doors. One of the things I suggest is a door wedge. If you can see that, you should carry that with you at all times. Put it underneath your door. Always use the chain lock as well. Don't answer the door. Look through the peephole. Keep your valuables in the safes inside the hotel. If the hotel does not have a safe, I would ask the front desk if they have a safe for the hotel where you can keep your valuables. I also suggest strongly, if you're traveling, you really shouldn't have many valuables, maybe a watch or something like that. I wouldn't bring a large diamond engagement ring or things of that nature. Always keep the shades and blinds closed. Important thing about hotels, everybody likes to be on the top floor, have the greatest views. The problem with that is if there's an emergency such as a fire, the hook and ladders can't get to you. So I always suggest that the second floor is probably the best, not the first floor, because people can come through your window. But the second floor, it's easy to get out of. God forbid there is a fire. People obviously can't get into your room since the second floor, but that would what I would suggest. I would not suggest any room higher than, say, the fifth floor. Yeah, and make sure that if anything occurs when you check in, if they already know, I'm not sure if any of you know the Erin Andrews story. She's a popular on-air personality. She went to a hotel. When she got there, they said, "Oh, Miss Andrews, we have your room. It's already ready." She went up to her room. Unbeknownst to her, the employees in the hotel already had something planned. They had drilled holes throughout the room so they could videotape her. They did. They put that up on the internet. So if something, just once again, if it doesn't feel right, then question it. If you go to the hotel and they already have the room for you and that doesn't feel comfortable for you, you've never been there before, but they're acting strange, just ask for another room. Next.
Okay, so just looking at time, so realistically, so you're looking at your personal risk model. We have travel risk assessments within DTCC for different locations, and they're always maintained and updated by the local government agencies, UK government, and you've got the US Smart Traveller Program. So always before you go out, go anywhere, have a look at these sites, just see what there are. And there's also Facebook, and Twitter is a really good one. So City of London Police have a good Twitter feed, and it gives you good updates on that. So next slide, please. Okay, and you would just do a travel checklist. So looking at documentation, so you would make copies. Security, make sure that the hotels you book in, the taxis, public transport, you've got as much information as possible before you actually book these to make sure that they are reputable. Travel itineraries, make sure you take copies, ensure somebody trusted knows your travel plan. Travel insurance, there's lots of different things going on now. So ensure that you've got relevant cover for your travel and travel plans, and also include vehicle insurance if using a hire car. Local currency, make sure you've got small amount of cash, including stopover countries. Medical considerations, some countries have restrictions on medication, so just make sure you check your sites before you go. Keep copies of emergency contact numbers in location you can remotely access, i.e. email account or an online drive. And then weather threat, just make sure that you check. We're in testing times at the moment, so you don't want to be caught up in floods and other things there. So just next slide, please. And this one's Mavari.
Thank you. Predatory drugs. They're prevalent in Latin America, Europe, and the United States. And the key here is to avoid becoming a victim. You can see by the video clip playing that this young lady is in a crowded area. She is supposed to be safe, but it was very easy for that gentleman to slip something into her drink. The negative effects of predatory drugs multiply exponentially when combined with alcoholic beverages. Some key things to remember: never accept open drinks from strangers. Do not leave your drinks unattended. If your drink has an unusual taste, smell, or color, definitely throw it out. If you arrive in a group, you want to make sure you leave with a group and never leave your companion behind. Date rape drugs preferred by sexual predators come in different forms as outlined below. And you can also take a look at the slide, and you can see exactly how quickly these different drugs take effect. There's GHB, propanol, ketamine, MDMA, scopolamine. And you always want to remember that if you take one drink and you suddenly feel drunk, that's a problem. And you want to make sure that your friend or whomever you're with, you report that to them so they can get you the help you need. If you're feeling dizzy, drowsy, or confused, just make sure that you get the help, and you want to make sure you report that to your local law enforcement as quickly as possible. Thank you.
So going on to security at home, realistically, we've gone over most of this. Make sure that you have your keys available, ready. If somebody drops you off at home, ask the driver to wait until you're safely inside. Make sure your entrance is well lit. If you have live in an apartment, don't be polite, hold the door for strangers, and ensure when you're answering the door, have a door latch on it so that you only let people in. If people want to use your phone in an emergency, ask them who you want to call, and you make that call. Do not let them into the home. You make that call to the emergency services on their behalf. They can just do that whilst they're standing out there. So this just sort of alleviates certain things. So realistically, we just, there's a big list there of these, but we have gone over these in previous slides. So next slide, please. And then we're just going on to safety tips. So safety in numbers, know your surroundings, avoid unfamiliar routes, locations, vary your movements. So don't always just go to work and back the same location, vary timings and all of this, and report anything suspicious. Whether that's the security in your business or local law enforcement, because that one piece of information will help maybe put a puzzle together for the police that an individual has been noted for that. Use reputable car services. Do not take photos of soldiers, police, government buildings, and military installations. Now, if you do see people taking photos of your business and all of that, make sure that is reported to security. You have the act awareness apps and that are out there, the government websites. These are really good areas where you can just raise any concerns. Next slide, please.
Harassment. I'm pretty sure that you guys have been watching the news and you've seen many cases play out in the public realm. Many organizations right now have a robust anti-discriminatory and harassment program. Harassment can take the form of unwelcome conduct that can be based on race, color, or religion. It's any unwarranted behavior that could be offensive, that could lead to intimidation or humiliation. And it's behavior that is meant to can either violate your dignity, creating an intimidating, degrading, or hostile or offensive work environment. What we're asking you to do here is that if you find yourself to be the victim of any of these things, please seek the help that you need from your human resources department. You definitely want to reach out to someone. If it's not HR, reach out to someone else that you can discuss this information with, but definitely discuss this information with someone who can, who's in a position to get you the help that you need. Thank you, Dave.
So that concludes our presentation. We're going to take some questions. Just two things I just really wanted to touch on when we travel. Luggage tags, very important. Don't put all your information on your luggage tag, meaning your full name, your full address, your phone number, because what does that mean? The people at the airport know that you're traveling because they know from the tag where you're going. They know you're going to Florida. They know you're going to be gone for quite a bit of time, and they know there's nobody home at your address, and they have your address. So I just suggest your last name and a phone number. Same on your doorbell at home, just your last name. Do not put your first name. Why? Because someone rings the bell. If they use your first name, your first instinct is, oh, they must know me. So don't put your first and last name on your bell. So we do have a few questions. I'll try to get to the ones that I see here, and then Sydney will jump in on the ones on Pigeonhole. One of the questions from Julie is, it gets dark very early in the winter. Do you have any tips for women who are walking home after work on quiet streets that are not well lit? Yes, obviously, if you can walk in groups, that would be great. If not, what I would do is make sure that your cell phone, your mobile phone, has the GPS tracker on it. I would make sure before you enter into the street that you have the emergency duress button on your phone. Have that ready to go. So when it's in your pocket, have your hand there. If you need to press it, you can do that. I would carry a whistle or some sort of noise-making device. Keep your head up, walk with confidence, know where you're going. If you think you're being followed, remember time and distance. If you see that same person within a 10-minute period of time in a different location, more than likely they are following you. So get yourself to a safe location, cross the street if you need to. If that individual crosses the street, more than likely you are being followed. So go to a safe location. Other question here, in case of a terrorist attack at the workplace, what tips do you have for survival? Well, it really all depends on what type of attack we're talking about. I'm positive that all of your companies have emergency preparedness plans in place. I would be guided by those plans. The most important thing is get to safety as quick as possible, stay in numbers again. But again, depending on the type of attack that it is, it's very difficult for me to give you specific type of answers, but I would be guided by your company's emergency preparedness plan. Sid, questions from Pigeonhole?
Yes, we do have a few. Our top voted one, what is the most effective way that you could fight if you're grabbed by someone and can't get away?
Okay, so I'll answer this as delicately as I possibly can. I'm not here to recommend that anybody fight or try and ward off any type of attacker. Number one, because I don't know you. I don't know your physical capabilities. I don't know if you have any type of defensive training. All I could say to you is that depending on the situation you're in, is if you feel that fighting is it, then you need to fight, right? Fight for your life. So I really can't give you any defensive tactics or anything like that. I know here in the United States, they talk about pepper spray and mace and things like that. I know in the UK it is illegal. That's something, anytime I do a presentation, I highly discourage anybody from doing those type of things. Number one, more than likely, you're not trained very well in it. Number two, more than likely, you'll wind up spraying yourself. And if the individual is on some sort of narcotics, it could enrage them even more to do more bodily harm to you. So I don't recommend things like that. And once again, if you make the decision to fight, then fight with everything you have. So any weapon that you possibly, a pen, a set of keys, anything you could possibly find inside your purse or your bag, anything, laptop, smack them in the head with the laptop. The key is you want to get away. It's right. You don't want to fight. You want to get away. So again, very difficult for me to answer. All I would say is depending on your level of preparedness, that would really dictate how you react to something like that.
Okay, thank you. We have another one. What I think you guys kind of discuss it as well, but what things should we consider on public transport, where to sit, transport hubs where you may be waiting?
Martin, want to jump in on that?
Yeah. So, with transport and that, like, make sure that you plan your route. Make sure that you know where you're going to. Are you getting a taxi from the train station? Are you going to be walking to your hotel from the train station? So it's not just actually when you're sat in the taxi. Is it a reputable one? There's lots of false Uber taxis out there which aren't insured. So you need to make sure that when you're using these apps that they're reputable, that the app shows you which driver, which number of the taxi cab it is, which actually arrives, that you check that information before you get in there. And also another way of just getting that is when just ask the driver on, do you know where you're going? And make sure when you're in there is be observant. The whole reason for this PowerPoint is to give you the awareness and just making sure that you're aware of your situation at all times. So if you see the taxi going south when you're supposed to be going north, ask him why, and then you should be starting to come up with a plan on what happens if that he's taking you into a location you do not want to go. So, have you got your mobile phone? Have you got emergency contacts? Does it have GPS tracking and all of this? This is where we're saying we can give you awareness, but we can't come up with a plan because we don't know your personal situation at that time. So that's the type of thing I would say for public transport is make sure that you plan and have reputable areas, use reputable firms.
Thank you, Martin. We have a question. What actions do you recommend if you wake up to a strange noise in your home?
Once again, kind of difficult depending on where you live, what type of noise. So depending on what it is, if you feel that somebody is knocking down your door, then obviously call law enforcement right away, whether it be 911 here in the United States or the emergency number where you reside. Kind of difficult, that one. If you hear voices, once again, it would be the call of the police right away. I would not encounter anybody, whether it be you're already inside the home and you hear somebody or see somebody inside your home. I would not encounter them. Or for instance, you come home to an apartment or a home where your door is ajar. Don't go inside to take a look and see what happened. Immediately call the police. You know that when you left your home, you left the door locked. So I would strongly suggest you do not go inside. You call law enforcement, wait till they arrive, and then let them go inside and check to make sure it's safe for you to go inside.
Okay, thank you, Dave. We have a question. When exiting a hotel room, should you put the do not disturb sign on the door or keep the TV on so people will assume the room is currently occupied?
There's a lot of discussion in reference to that, depending on what you have in your room, right? If you do have valuables in your room that you feel need to be protected, yeah, I think by and large, keeping the TV on does make it seem like someone's there. The do not disturb sign, that can go either way, because if the person really is checking out your room and they see at 7 in the morning there's a do not disturb sign, and then at 7 at night they've been looking at the do not disturb sign still on there could be different reasons as well. And also you have to worry about then the hotel staff who may think there's a problem inside the room because you haven't come out of it. So it really depends on the situation and what you have inside that room that you're trying to protect.
Can I just add on that
Sure.
as well? Is when you're looking at hotels, make sure they've got safes, the doors fit properly, there's no gaps to the doors. You're looking at your personal safety in case of a fire. Make sure that you know your fire routes. Make sure you can exit that building in an emergency, and have a discussion with them. Just to turn around and say, what is your plan if something happened to this building, sort of thing. They will always have an emergency evacuation plan. So these are the type of things which will give you that information so that you can make sure that you've got your personal risk assessment done.
It's really a valid point, Martin, that you bring up, and I would venture to say 95% of travelers don't do that, and I strongly suggest they do. As Martin said, when you come into a hotel room, there's always an evacuation diagram on the back door. You should do that. You should count how many doors it is when you exit your hotel suite, how many doors it is to get to the stairwell, not to the elevator, to the stairwell, because in the event of a fire and you have to get low to the ground, you may not be able to see, and all you need to do is count the doors. Same thing on a cruise ship. You want to know where to go, God forbid something happens. So most people don't take advantage of that diagram that's on the back of their door, but I strongly suggest that you should. Next question.
Thank you. If someone jumps in your car and tells you to drive away, what would you recommend?
So another difficult question. It really all depends on the situation. So if the person is brandishing a weapon, then I would obviously comply. If you don't see a weapon and you can see the individual's two hands, I would strongly suggest you get out of that vehicle as quick as possible and then run to safety, whether it be into an open store or something to that effect. If you don't see a weapon and you see both of his hands, then the idea, once you leave that area in your car with that person in there, I don't know what could happen. It's very difficult for you to fight off someone while you're driving a vehicle. So once again, if you see a weapon, then absolutely comply. Try and talk to the person, right? You want to stall for time. Keep the person calm if possible. Obviously, I know that you're not going to be calm, but most criminals that do things like that, they're not calm either. So, any sudden movements, things like that could trigger them. So you want to try and keep the situation calm. Remember details, right? Remember where you're driving, where you turn. These are things that could help later on. Remember what he was wearing. What did he say to you? Do you see any visible tattoos? Again, the type of weapon that he may have. But if you don't see a weapon and you can see both of his hands, my guidance would be to get out of the vehicle.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. I have, what are some key points to focus on when discussing stranger danger with children?
Yeah, the key is to be brutally honest with your child, right? You want to let them know the do's and the don'ts and what things to be, to look out for. Any type of person who's trying to give your child something or says they know mommy and daddy, those are things you want to make sure that your children are aware of. Sometimes people don't have those difficult conversations because, again, we want to try and protect our children. We want our children to think that the world is a very safe place, and let them kind of figure it out as they go along. But the sooner that you could speak to your children about the dangers, and again, not to scare them, not to panic them, but so they know that there are good people and bad people in this world. And the more information you give them, there's a lot of publications that are out there specifically related to that stranger danger, which I highly recommend. If anybody wants to send an email, I could give you some recommendations on things of that nature. But you want to be brutally honest with them, and you want to make sure that they understand that they're never going to be in trouble with you. There's never any secrets between you and them. Very, very important. So on that note, since we are wrapping up, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Gender Networks for having us, my colleagues Martin, Valerie, and Sydney. And I also want to thank Alice, Denise, Gemma, and Vanessa for putting this all together. So we truly appreciate it. It was a pleasure for us to be here. And again, if there are any questions in the future, we gave out our emails. I'm sure if you reach out to someone from the Gender Networks, if you didn't get the emails, they could provide it for you and be more than happy to answer any questions. Not sure if Denise or Alice or anybody was going to jump on at this point.
I wasn't going to, but I am now.
I forced you into it, Denise.
Yeah, I did. It's lucky I've got a shirt on today. Looking smart. Just again, thanks, guys. And I think, from the network's point of view, the ERGs are very important at DTCC. And the WINS network did reach out to Martin initially after incidents that had happened in London. And then obviously you guys as a team took our sort of feedback away about women and their safety, and you put this deck together and presented it internally and now externally. So again, thank you to your team for putting it all together on behalf of the WINS ERG. It's really appreciated.
truly our pleasure. So thank you again for having us, and everyone, please be safe, be well. And like I said, if there's anything anyone ever needs from any of us, we're more than happy to provide any type of information or assistance. Thank you, everyone. Be well.
Thank you. Stay safe.